component of it, and I'm going to do a comparison of like boxing, because I started doing boxing the same day I started doing FMA 20 years ago, and I know multiple styles, and I've fought professional boxers and all that kind of fun stuff. So I'm going to do a comparison side by side so you can kind of differentiate between where the sport and where the Panantukan is, and so you can kind of see the both worlds. Okay, first things first, stance. When we're looking at Western boxing versus Panantukan. Panantukan was the precursor to Western boxing, for those that don't know. If you look at the Fighting Irish, Notre Dame, right? We see a dude that's standing there doing fisticuffs, doing this style. If you look at Wing Chun, boom, here, and then they pivot. I'm in the same geometry as fisticuffs, right? So this style went away after Filipinos came over on the with the Chinese to the railroads, and they started working, and they started dominating the light and middleweight class boxing arenas. And a part of that wasn't that they were so much more skilled, they were just in really better positions. Because if my hands are here, I have to go twice the distance, and I have to go twice the distance to block than if my hands are here. And the only reason why their hands were here is because they had knives in their hands. So their hands were up in this position. Lesson number one is where you hold your hands, and your stance is going to dictate how hard you have to work or whether or not you're going to get brain damage. It's really simple, right? So two ways to think about standing. So I know peekaboo style, Philly shell, and classical boxing style. Those are my three. So classical boxing, hands come up, right? The reason why I'm standing this way, square, is because when I stand square, both of my hands are equal distance. So my jab and my cross can come back, and they're constantly accessible. The second that I turn my body, one goes forward and one goes back. So I have a very dynamic lead, but my cross never delivers because it always comes up short, right? Unless I want it to, because it's a part of my tactics, okay? So here's another thing to think about with stance. If my feet are forward, both toes forward, I'm in this position. If I turn my feet this way, I get more of a lean, and this comes into like more of our evasion drill. I get more dynamic angling. What I do is, because I always ask myself, how can I do it all? Is I put my feet where I box orthodox, which means left foot forward. And so if you can see my feet here, I square up this way, but what happens is when I need to turn my feet, I'll do like a military right facing movement like this. So if you ever seen somebody say, this way, pivot, step, pivot, step. Well, from a basic boxing stance, when I pivot that way, I'm now in a bladed stance. So I can have the best of both worlds. At any given time, I can have a dynamic lead. Now I'm in that sideways stance, but once I pivot my feet back on my cross, now I have all of my access available to me. So I don't have to throw hands in peekaboo style and then change my stance and then throw hands Philly shell style or classical style. I can just make a right facing movement from here, and then all of a sudden I'm there. Because now both my toes are pointing towards the camera. Now both my toes are pointing towards my opponent. So I have that cross that will actually come into play. First move is the jab. Jab is going to be lead hand. Classical boxing day one. When you throw the jab, what they teach you is to rotate your pinky up like this. And they teach you that because your jawline's open. So if I throw a punch, when I rotate, my shoulder over rotates and I have coverage on my jawline. That's sport. In reality, Panantukan doesn't wear gloves. And so old school boxers, the guys that taught me used to say their methodology was kill the body and the head will fall. So if I do this, yeah, I have upper jawline is like covered and stuff, right? But I opened up on both sides, my liver or my spleen, right? Because these guys are going to want to hit me in the organs. The only reason why we wear gloves is to protect our hands, not the other person's face. That's it. So you don't break your hands all the time. And the way you do that is you don't punch people in the hardest part of their body, which is their head. You punch them in the body where they can't take it anymore, and then you finish off the head, right? So here's the two variations. Jab for sport, I rotate my pinky up. When I land, I have my glove to protect my hand, but it's also called a boxer's fracture, which means that it breaks your hand so often that in the medical community, they had to change the language to say, this is how boxers break their hands. I don't know about you, but I'm kind of like, if that's the case, then I don't really want to break my hand. Maybe I should do something different, but whatever. Live your best life now. So we're here like this. Look at the distance from this elbow to the rotation. versus if I just throw it straight this way and I bring my shoulder up to cover my jawline, I get the same effect, but I also have half the distance, 1 to 2 from right there, and then I have an extension. Versus here, once I start to rotate, I've doubled my space, and I've gotten full exposure on my liver or my spleen, depending on if I'm southpaw or I'm orthodox. So Chris is going to come over here, and what we're going to do is we're going to work as a drill. You can try both. So he's going to hold pads for me, and by pads for me, I mean his hands are going to be up, because even if he's holding pads, he's still training, right? I'm aiming for the forehead because I'm not trying to be a dick. But for a minute, for 30 seconds, and Jason's going to yell change, what we're going to do is I'm going to throw a jab. And I'm going to change between this here, where my shoulder comes up, and change between pivoting the shoulder and kind of watch the difference in the body mechanics, all right? So when Jason says go, okay. Chris is working his, that feels so bad to me. This is quick and snappy. This, there it is. Okay, and I'm just checking his guard. Now on my side, I can be working gun-tang guards, right? So I'm already in this position. When he's punching, there's no reason why I can't start angling my elbow out, so he starts hitting that. So now cross.
You never just go like straight this way. It's always that angle or angle.
Straight, I do straight for another reason, which we'll get into in a minute when we get the technique. So straight allows me to create a platform, because if you look at Sombrada, when you're throwing it this way for your crossroads, you're like this because it creates cross energy and the person freezes. If I'm hitting somebody and I want the hit, bam, I can hit them this way. But if I throw my jab and I turn it, it allows me to set their body. So see, now I have a stiff jab there, and that allows me to now pivot off of that point. If I did it this way, it's not as easy because that's a smaller surface area. And if I did this, I can work my triangle footwork off a stiff jab and keep that point of contact for control. So from here, I've got the cross, which is the same as this here. Why do they call it a cross? Because it comes across your body, right? Same thing, they'd say rotate here, pivot from your feet, rotate there. Now you can go straight. When I hit with tempo mano, I typically throw it almost like a chun choi, pop, pop, one, that way. And I angle because I'm already anticipating that I need to be out of the way or something's gonna happen, right? If I did this, I still have kind of an opening here, but if I step offline, that opening gets shut with that cross mechanic. So now on the cross, what we'll do is Chris will hold his guard, and I'm gonna work the cross for, for 30 seconds. I'm gonna mix it up. Doubles, I can throw my jab cross, boom, right? Boom, boom, boom. I can go classical where I rotate. I can go, ah. I can go low, boom, boom, and high. Low to high, low to high. Cool. Next, hooks. So typically for a hook high or hook low. If he's hooking for the head, so he's here, I have this kind of catch like this. In peekaboo, what we do is we slip all the time, okay? So you're constantly, peekaboo's the same style as Tyson. The concept's very basic. It's striking high and low, which is body, head, or head, body, head. And you can never throw more than 3 punches without moving your head position. It's very Kali, very Kali. But they are also aiming for the organs. Customato, Mike Tyson's trainer, used to tell him, punch with bad intentions. What he meant is hit them in the liver or the spleen. So every time somebody would throw a hook, he would haul off, and it let him have this opportunity to get out of the way and just throw some crazy shots, because peekaboo was designed for smaller fighters. Okay, so at this, we're going to do the hook here. He's going to hook to the head, right? Now, my counter, when he hooks, is going to be to slip, okay? And now here's the difference between classical boxing and Panantukan. In terms of the strike, when you would show 1, 2, and then 3, they step, turn, and hook. And for years when I was fighting, I'm like, why is it so hard to land that hook? And the reason is really easy. It's because that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So in that motion, bop, bop, that repositioning, you lose the person because they're not guarding, they move again, right? The way that Kali will throw that shot, or the way that Panantukan will, is through a sidestep. So instead of me going, turn my hip and my hand comes over, I can kick my foot back, or I can sidestep. So if you're watching my feet on my hook, here's classical. You can see why that would take too long. Then the guy's gone. Here's more Panantukan from right there. There's my sidestep from knife tapping, right? And all I'm doing is throwing it from there, boom, because it allows me to turn right off the bat. The other way to do it is that instead of kind of like how you turn a boat, boats don't turn from the front, they turn from the back. So if I want a lot of power on this, I kick my foot back. And what happens is, like when we see that 4 count, the power is there because the distance is moving backwards, but I never lose my center line. So, all right, so back to the hooks here. So here's, we're gonna just do, we'll do 2 rounds. One round is just, I'm gonna, Chris will just cover, and I'm gonna practice between throwing classical and then throwing, feel the difference? Like,
Oh yeah.
it's, you know, boom, here, boom. And now here's the thing to look at. If I throw like a classical boxer, I have to reset to my base. Reset to my base. If I throw it like Panantukan style, whoop, it sets me up to keep throwing consecutive shots because I never give up my stance. I never have to reset my feet because the punch loads the feet, the head movement loads the legs, and everything just keeps moving. See how I just swung them across using a hook, and I just used it as a reap. Like I don't have to stop hitting because everything's in line. So 30 seconds, I'm gonna go alternate between classical and boom, side steps. I can use my loops, just like we do with the looping cut on the template. Boom, there it is. Loops can go to the legs, boom, to the legs, the knee. All I'm doing is just using the hook 3-dimensionally, right? But this is a blade, that'd be 9, 10, 11, 12 from the template, right? There you go. Now look at how you affect my posture that way. I'm facing that way now. That's the difference. Control. Now I'm facing here, and then when you fire off number 2, I don't have as much, yeah, like I'm gonna have problems. There you go. So that's one way. Now, relax on the intensity and work the rotation for the acceleration to get the power. Yeah, look at how much more aggressive. You just made me do a 90-degree turn, and I blocked it. I love it when people block. That's why I don't block shit. Yes, exactly. Doesn't matter. There you go. Now, you can cup the knee on that hook. There's your, yeah, mano-mano form, right? Number 7. When I'm going here, it's just a hooking mechanic. But rather than like just hitting with the fist, I'm bypassing to get a control point. So now we look at like your classical counters to the hook. So I have my high guard, my low guard, but the one you see a lot is you see this. You have a bob, slip, and a weave. Bobs and slips are for straight punches. You throw a straight punch, boop, there it is, throws a straight punch, slip, there's a straight punch, slip, but that's always a problem because you can slip into the hand. So I'll typically slip to the outside, right? You have a bob, which allows you to change elevation. You have a slip, and then a weave is for when he throws a hook. He goes underneath. Now, since I'm already going that direction, I take that opportunity to throw a hook. Okay, that's the classical like countering. There's 2 ways to do that though. So when you look at it from a sport boxing perspective, you'll see guys tie the rope in the middle of the school, and then we used to just do this all day. You're walking through the rope, right? A lot of quads, but again, anything from boxing that's for sport and not for combat isn't going to set you up for consecutive control and mechanics. So here's the way that we do it in the form. If you notice on number 5 in the form, after we do our boom, boom, we're here. The way I get my head to go down is I kick my leg back, which brings my head forward. So that's a very C-lot move. But what happens if you do it that way is, watch how much power I can generate from this position here, right? Because I have to operate in the confines of this stance. How hard do you think I can hit somebody if I did this? You know, like that's a death shot. That's like a bomb, right? And so when you kick the leg back to go down like this, what I'm doing is actually putting my feet so far behind that when I throw my punch, I've got, let's see, right here. That's probably 3 feet of distance. Same mechanic with the head tilt. That's probably 10 feet of distance. So the power is amplified. The distance is longer, which means that when I hit him, I'm in a completely different position than me just staying in the same spot, throwing a hook and popping back to where he knows I was at last known location, right? So this time we're going to cycle these two mechanics. So he's going to throw hook high.
You're handling them.
Oh, I don't care. So I'm just going to go here, and this is if I'm in the pocket, right? So he just throws, boop, just keep going, right? So these are one. The other way for me to do it is to go here. See how that allowed me to step through and get a huge access. Let's go here so they see the feet a little better. So from right here, my feet stay the same. And I can start to hit. There's my knee capture. Boom. If I want to go into Panantukan, there's just my basic sports, right? There's the kind of stuff that can happen if I use that body mechanic. That's battle versus sport, right? If I have a straight weapon, oh, here's my spear, right? And I want to throw my spear. If I tilt, I can keep that same line of trajectory to throw that, right? But if I have to like move, see how, here's my footwork here, I'm aiming over there, I'm aiming over here, and I have to plant my feet to thrust. But if I did it this way the whole time, see how that line never really changes. So I can move my feet and keep my power angle. And part of the reason why a lot of people can't do consecutive movements is because the way that they're moving their body constantly changes their angle. Like if they were holding a gun, they'd be aiming all over the place. But with this stuff, it's like my target never changes. My target never changes. And that's why if you ever watch Ray, he's never moving his stick. It's his body. But if I did it like classical style, my gun would be going everywhere that my center line is going, instead of keeping that one linear line that allows me, boom, and there's my punch, right? It's all about the feet, not about the hands. So that's the difference. There's the tilt here, which gives me the upper body. There's the tilt here when I want to get the extra hook. I don't turn my hips into my hand. I basically tilt my body to where this foot goes backwards. So either my feet move backwards to bring my upper body forward, or my upper body moves backwards to bring my feet forward. So that tilting is where I get a lot of the power without having to sacrifice the angle. Here's another one of those details to Mosey's point, okay? Classical overhand for boxing. There's a shift, I turn the hips, my hand comes over. You hear it called a shovel punch sometimes if it goes like in an ellipse straight down. But watch my center line control, right? So if I'm here like this and I turn my body, I've lost center line and I'm open. What I'm gonna do instead is, like how we did that jab, I'm gonna bring it out first, and then I'm gonna use the footwork to turn it and then clip it. So I'm just using the basic overhand, or the basic triangle. Because if this is shooting straight here, see at the last second, it'll turn into an overhand and I'm out of the way. And I've got my linear ground from point 1 to point 2. There's my linear ground, right? And the effect on the person's different. Like, so we'll have Chris hold his gloves up. If I throw a classical overhand, watch his feet, right? Classical overhand. Okay, watch his feet. I'm going to throw the same amount of energy. Close the window a little bit. There you go. So from right there, if I go from this position, look at how I just moved him, right? And that's just because I was going straight. In real life, what I'll tend to do is use that as a jam. So if I'm throwing shots here and he wants to block, perfect, because then that lines me up to change the angle. And I use my overhand as a crossroads. Because once I angle on him, if I do this, he might turn to face me and I've got the same angle. But if I'm throwing punches and he starts going this way, see, it's like I can start to use those techniques to move his body like a crossroads in Puño Mano. So from right here, 30 seconds, just gonna go overhand classic, and I'm gonna interspice it with, you know, doing, you let me know when you think I'm doing it the Panantukan way, when I'm doing it the classical way. And there's guard number 6, right? That's why I Philly shell. I'll feed him classical shit so he doesn't know what I can actually do, so that when I have to start legitimately doing it, it'll hurt him. Okay. Next move, and then we'll move on. Back fist. So we've got uppercuts are kind of an extension of a hook. I just look at that as a vertical hook. It's no different, right? But let's look at back fist, because this is one thing that's really people don't think about in boxing, and it's really good. So from right here, I throw my jab. Let's say I miss, that's fine. From there, I have my back fist, okay? Or I can just be from this position. Muhammad Ali used to throw a jab that almost looked like a back fist. So Chris is gonna have his hands up, right? And I'm just gonna throw. I can be at any time. See how the back fist comes over, crosses my center line? The last knockout I got, big dude. And we were here in the pocket like this. And I was here, and he dropped his hands because he thought he was safe. And I came over this way, and I hit him, and then wham! Because that downward shot, it's just like our guard. If his hand is up, this is a whole component of Panantukan. Let's say this is here, right? And I come down at an angle, it's going to clear everything out of the way, and his head's going to come in. Because I'm following through, I'm not necessarily having to retract. So on this, on the back fist, he keeps his guard up. I can either throw it here, I can throw a straight punch. And from the straight punch, use my back fist. And that can help me to move his position and adjust my feet off of. Jab, jab, or just a back fist, jab, back fist, boom, bang. All right. Work jabs from the point of contact. Make a point of contact.
Right.
It's whatever you want, but practice a transition from a straight punch into a back fist. You throw your jab, and I parry it. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, like I didn't solve my problem. That's why the guard works. If the guard's not there and you throw the jab and I parry it, bam! There it goes, and it allows you to put head on a platter, and you're there. If my guard is up, yeah, see how that's why you guys see me do this shit all the time. It also goes perfect with that number 4 evasion drill from Pamela on our knees. So it allows things to move over as an angle. So from right there, throw your jabs. There it is. Now when you make that point of contact, inject the energy, but move your feet a little bit and you'll get twice the movement on me. Yeah, look at that. There it is. We'll make it cross down at a 45. Yeah, exactly. Just made me take a huge step. There it is. Thanks. Good.
It's the beginning of an angle, it's like a hammer.
Absolutely, whatever you want. Or you could just draw your blade, you know?
Right.
There it is. That's where my blade's coming out. I'm doing Philly shell. My hand's already on my rig. Like they throw a punch and I'm like, cool, you throw your punch. There's my stab. So what we'll do is we'll work some of the combinations. So big concepts that don't exist in classical versus things that exist in Panantukan. Crossroads, okay? What's a crossroads? Anytime your weapons, stick, knife, whatever, meet and make a cross, there's a point of control that becomes available to you. I want people to stop thinking of blocking like a good idea and think of it like an opportunity for a crossroad. First time I fought a professional boxer, I started holding my hands up and I had a good ass guard and he broke straight through that guard. Like, you know, blood down the face, the whole thing. And after that fight, I realized I was like, okay, like when people hit hard enough with enough intent, because he was from Mexico, like, and they are sluggers out there, I had to make a mental note and go like, okay, so, and this is me sparring, right? I'm not the Highlander. I'm the dude that just like did it long enough and sucked long enough to where I just learned all my lessons through sucking. So I'm like, all right, so rule number 1, right? So don't block. That's a dumb idea. Like unless you're George Foreman and you have the mass to back it up. Because if he throws a bomb at me, all I have to essentially do, no matter what the energy is just to deflect it however it goes. And I can still work and I don't have to eat the full force of it. The other side of this is if somebody starts blocking, just start to get happy. Because if they block, what they've done is they've given you a weapon and taken it out of commission. So if I block this way and Chris feeds a straight jab and he keeps it there, now he injects that grounding line from there. He just controlled my footwork through a stiff jab. That's how I use it all day. So that's why you'll see a lot of times on my combinations, I'm going to start showing you, I'll use a jab or I'll use a point of contact to pivot off of. What you're not seeing there is that there's a big difference from classical peekaboo style, which is if I threw those punches and I weaved and I hit, because there's no directional control on Chris's body here. If I weave, he could do something unprecedented. I don't know what he's going to do something. Right, he might throw a knee because in Panantukan, knees are fair game. I might go down this way and he might throw a knee, right? And I have to contend with that. But if I throw this thing with the grounding line in place, what you're not seeing is what I just set him at. Now I'm releasing the control. So I'm steering his body. So I have the block is a crossroad. So we're going to work. Now here's something I want you to get in the habit of too, is if I throw a jab, block, now shoulder cover. Now with the shoulder cover, so throw a jab at me. Here's my block line, right? What I'm doing is I'm letting it pass, and I angle my head back, and I present this. All kinds of funny things start to happen when you do that. Because if he throws a straight punch, it's a ramp. It's going to go, you know, essentially with enough energy up and over. I'm just showing it in isolation. When I add it in with footwork, this is my bread and butter all day long, right? So that's how I'm fighting with people. There's a reason why these techniques work, and they're not for the reasons that you think they do. It's literally just that there's a ramp. When he throws the punch, I step in with it. This is, you know, crane style. You have all this stuff here, but I also have access to his core now. So that was just this. Instead of blocking with the hand, I block with the shoulder and I lean back. And then once it comes in, I just kind of go step. And to Jason's point, I'm keeping my L stance, which means that I'm keeping all the power that I just kept from there to throw a really horrific shot at him. Okay, so I'm going to throw some jabs. I want him to cover with the shoulder. So when you cover with the shoulder, also step in because your target wants to be here, but just get in the habit of closing the distance. There it is. Now you want contact. So in boxing, a big slip is bad and a little slip is good, meaning that if he throws a straight punch at me and I go, ha, I have nothing to counter. But if he throws that same punch and it just barely misses me, look at where I'm at now. Like I could dump him on the ground if I wanted to because I can capitalize on the distance. So from right here, when I throw the punch, there it is. Good. And then back out. So if you want me to keep throwing it, give me a point of reference. Give me your glove. That lines me up, right? I expect something to be there, right? And then I fall through the thing, right? So it's fine to have it there. You're not relying on it. There it is. Now lean back a little bit more on the shoulder because I'm feeling a catch on the shoulder. So from here, so as you step in, yeah, there you go. They're together. They're not apart. Look at it like you're shearing through off with your head over there. If your head's over there, it's impossible for me to hit you. That's why when we train a lot of the times, we use slip bag, and I'm constantly doing these kinds of motions where I'm tilting my body at a 45. Because if their punch is coming here and I shoot in and I just have my head over here, they're in my power line for my L shot, for my L stance. And so anything I throw down that line is going to be super bad. Okay, so from right here, set me up to give you a pattern, which is that I have feedback. And then shoot in with your, there it is. I'm gonna give you a combination. This jab is now a reference point. So from this jab, I'm gonna step offline. I'm gonna hit to the hip. Okay, that's my 1-inch punch. When I go here, boom, that gives me the head. I use that all the time. So if they want to block, rather than doing this huge retrieval and positioning, and he's throwing his hands, the thing that's keeping him from throwing his hands is I'm giving him a stiff jab this way, and I'm giving him a little bit of energy, right? I'm not going to live here in the moment I shift it, but in this position, when I release it, watch what happens to his body. See how his body came forward a little bit? So I capitalize on that crossroads here, and when his body comes forward a little bit, I adjust my punch for there, and then I come over top. So it's going to be jab to the head, 1-inch punch to the hip, overhand or back fist overhand. So one more time, boom, boom, boom. I feed that one. I come in a little bit, pop, pop, bang. There it is. Next one. Now this is the principle in its isolation. This is an old school 1 ratio. Be right off the bat. Guy's got his hands up like this, and from right there, or just whatever. So he's right there. Yeah, 1, right? So I just yank his hands down. I have my guard, and I throw a hook. Okay. So he's in this position. I can be adding in these. Boom, this way. I can be adding in this way, right? So then there's my 2 modifiers, and I can work 1 and then the other. You have the positional stuff. Boom, there it is. Yep. So that can be done double-handed or single-handed. If I'm in this position and I have just a lead guard this way, he can pull it down. There it is. And that's where we have these stirring hooks, right? So my guard is here. Bang, there it is. Let's say that my guard's a little loose on this side. There it is. Good. And if it's loose on both sides, it's whatever makes you happy. You know, like, or whatever. Because in reality, here's Ernie's version of this technique. Ernie's going to go boom and hit you in the head because he loves to throw headbutts, man. Like that's one of the 7 weapons of Panantukan. Hand, hand, elbow, elbow, knee, knee, head, right? Okay. Those are just basic ideas. So what we'll do now is we'll just kind of play. Let's do, I don't know, it's like a minute. I don't know, whatever. Let's just work until we're done. We'll see where we go. So pick one in your head you think you want to play with, or just let's move around just to get accustomed to the movement, right? Play with it. Yeah, so just, so just jab at my head. Boom, boom, there you go, bang, good. There it is. Good.
Like intensity that we wanted.
You can go a little harder. That's fine. I'll let you know.
The set.
Keep going. That's good.
That's good.
Yeah, medium is good. So from right here, hop, hop. So see right there, boom. See how I'm using my hands and my controls to get in there. As soon as we make a point of contact, I'm steering from that point of contact. That's what's allowing a lot of it. So don't get so like percussive. Think of your boxing more like three-dimensional. Relax. Just let it work for you. There you go. Play with stuff. There you go.